What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today, as you could have guessed, we're going to be talking about Chris Paul and his great bounce back season with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, to truly understand why this year was so impressive for Chris Paul, we have to go back to the 2019 season, which was one of the worst seasons of Chris Paul's career, as he averaged career lows in both points per game and field goal percentage. And when it came to the playoffs, it didn't get much better for Chris Paul, as he put up pretty average numbers for someone of Chris Paul's standards, and the Houston Rockets, they would have an extremely disappointing end of their season, losing to the Golden State Warriors in 6 games. And with Houston being bounced in the second round, Daryl Morey and the Houston Rockets, they would look to make a move in the offseason, and that would involve Chris Paul being traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder in exchange for Russell Westbrook. Now, at the time, this trade was seen as a huge loss for Chris Paul, as he went from a Houston Rockets team that was contending for championships to an Oklahoma City team that was given a 0.2% chance to even make the playoffs. And this Thunder team, their over-under on win totals was 32.5, which was 24th in the NBA, behind teams like the Bulls, Hawks, Timberwolves, Pistons, Kings, Magic, and Spurs. So basically, Oklahoma City, they were an afterthought when it came to the playoffs, and many people thought this would be a wasted year of Chris Paul's career. Now, through the first 20 games of the season, Oklahoma City had an 8-12 record, and they were 10th in the Western Conference, and Chris Paul, he was definitely looking his age, not playing up to all-star caliber standards. But over the next 34 games, Oklahoma City would go 25-9 with Chris Paul in the lineup, and they would go from a team that was on the outside looking in on the playoff picture to a team that had a solidified playoff spot. And Chris Paul during the stretch, he was absolutely phenomenal, averaging 18, 7, and 5 on near 50, 40, 90 splits. And because of that great play and OKC's sudden turnaround, he was selected to be an All-Star for the first time since the 2016 season. Now, I normally wouldn't look to All-Star games to show how great a player is, but in this case, I will give an exception, because in this game, Chris Paul, he played the entire fourth quarter despite not being selected as a starter for the game. And I think that shows how highly the teammates think of him and how highly the players in the league value his IQ and his late game decision making. Now, over the remaining 15 games of the season, Oklahoma City would go 11-5 and finish with a 44-28 record, which was good enough for 5th in the Western Conference. Now, Chris Paul, he was undoubtedly the driving force of the Oklahoma City team, but he also had a great supporting cast around him that featured young guys like SGA, Lou Dort, and Darius Bazley. And I would say SGA, he benefited the most from Chris Paul's mentorship, as this year, he took a huge jump in production and showed that he is one of the best young point guards in the NBA. And I just think it's so impressive for this Oklahoma City team to have won 44 games. When entering the year, they were projected to win 32.5 games, and they were given a 0.2% chance of even making the playoffs. And one last thing I want to highlight is how great Chris Paul was in the clutch this year, as he led the NBA in clutch points with 150, shooting 52.2% from the field, 37.0% from 3, and 92.0% from the line in clutch time situations. And he also had the third highest plus-minus in the clutch, only behind his 2 teammates Dennis Schroeder and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Now, in the first round of the playoffs, Chris Paul, he'll be matched up against his former teammate James Harden and the player he was traded for in Russell Westbrook and the Houston Rockets. Now, in these first 2 games, CP3, he was average at best, and because of that, Oklahoma City, they would go down 0-2 to the Houston Rockets. But in games 3 and 4, Chris Paul, he would definitely bounce back, averaging 26, 6, and 4 on 54, 36, 86 splits. And after those 2 straight losses, James Harden and the Rockets, they would come blazing back, and they would beat the Thunder by 34 points in Game 5, setting up an elimination Game 5 for Chris Paul and the Thunder. Now, in this Game 6, CP3 he would have the best game of the season, having 28 points, 7 boards, 3 assists on 50, 50, 100 splits. And what makes this game so impressive is how clutch Chris Paul was, having 15 points in the fourth quarter, including a clutch 3-pointer, as well as some clutch free throws. Now, after that thrilling finish to Game 6, we'd have a similar finish in Game 7, but this time James Harden and the Rockets, they would come out victorious, as Harden had a huge clutch block on Lou Dort, and Chris Paul, he missed a crucial shot with 43 seconds remaining in the fourth quarter. Now, in this game, Chris Paul, he was still spectacular, and he actually became the oldest player in NBA history to have a triple-double in a Game 7. And if I was a Thunder fan, I would have been disappointed in the moment, coming off a tough Game 7 loss, but after a few days, I would be more encouraged than discouraged, because this Thunder team, they proved they could compete with some of the best teams in the NBA, and they defied all the odds of even making the playoffs. And Chris Paul, he destroyed any narrative that he was washed, and SGA, he took a huge leap this year, and he's really showing that he's a rising star in the NBA, And you also have a guy like Lou Dort, who stepped up big time in a Game 7, and he shows he's going to be a big piece of Oklahoma City's future. And for me personally, I loved watching this OKC team, and I loved watching the three-point guard lineup of Schroeder, Chris Paul, and SGA. And I thought this Thunder team, they were one of the most exciting teams to watch in the NBA. And I am sad I won't get to watch them anymore, but again, I don't think Thunder fans should be hanging their heads, and they should be super proud of how this team performed, because in my mind, SGA, he has the potential to be a perennial all-star and one of the best players in the NBA. Now, when talking about Chris Paul, I can't say enough about how impressive this year was for him. He proved all the doubters wrong, and anyone who ever called him washed after the 2019 playoffs, they were definitely proven wrong, as he stepped up big time in 2020 playoffs and showed why he's one of the most clutch players in the entire NBA. And I do hope Chris Paul stays with the Thunder and continues to mentor the young guys and provide leadership to some of the guys like Dennis Schroeder, Danilo Gallinari, as well as Steven Adams, because I think Chris Paul, his impact, it goes beyond the stat sheet, and what he did for this Oklahoma City Thunder team this year, that just defies the stat sheet, and you can't quantify how valuable he was to this team. So that really is all I have to say about Chris Paul's 2020 season. I was just super impressed by this year, and I thought it deserved a video, and it deserves a lot of recognition. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time.